if you feel it. Jason! It's the wonder of nature, baby!
You never had a chance.
You want one? It's coming! It's headed right for us! It's already here.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Matt Movies 611. No, this is not Take 3 Productions. I know that's where you're used to seeing me in this kind of form, but I am here tonight to discuss the new summer blockbuster, Twisters, starring Daisy Edgar-Jones and Glenn Powell. But I am not alone. I have Mike Kaye from Renegade Pop Culture. How you doing tonight, Mike?
Great to have me.
And we also have Tommy, also from Renegade Pop Culture. How you doing, Tommy?
Bro, let me tell you something, bro. This, as a proud New Yorker, I could not be more prouder of a city girl from Sapulpa, Oklahoma, who felt it, chased it, and what's that? Oh, Brock's not here tonight. Anyway, excited to be here, Matt. We are ready for a wonderful time talking about one of the year's best films, especially when it comes to the theatrical experience.
Yes. So please, this is going to be a spoiler review, but we'll let you know we're not going to start with spoilers. So if you haven't seen Twisters yet, don't worry, you won't get spoiled right off the bat. But before we get into the movie, I want to just really quick, because this is a sort of sequel to the 1996 Jan de Bont classic, Twisters, starring the late Bill Paxton and the still alive Helen Hunt. I always feel like I have to say that when you say the late, because some people will be stupid and be like, oh, they're both dead. No, Helen Hunt is very much alive, and yet not in this movie. We'll talk about that later. So, Tommy, I want to go with you first. You don't have to get very specific, just kind of your general feelings on Twister. You love it, you hate it, is it your favorite disaster movie? Is it just kind of disposable to you?
Well, Matt, the original Twister has played a very central role in my life, from its presence to its pull and the ability to speak to us. And when I think about it, I think about the emotional connection it's had on all our lives, especially those who feel the connected by it. And to me, that's the power of it and how it connects us all. And in my hometown of Peoria, I never saw the movie when it originally made its way through theater, when it originally had its theatrical run. But I can only imagine, thinking back on it, the experience one must have felt with their buttered popcorn as they walked into one of the 14 screening rooms at Goodrich Quality Theaters, Willow Knolls 14. The 35 millimeter screen presentation, surrounded by sound systems of DTS, Dolby Digital, and or Sony Dynamic Digital systems, dependent on what screening room one saw the movie at that theater. Yet, my first glimpse of the staple came atop the bedroom television in the loft of my childhood home on Pine Tree Road in Peoria. Placed promptly on display atop of the VCR, something about that VHS box spoke to me. Looking back, I now understand why. It serves reminder of my own experience to one summer day on Pine Tree Road. My mom, my sister, and I hid in our crawl space as a tornado left their presence known in our neighborhood. Items are replaceable, people are not. And in the case of our next door neighbors, the neighborhood came together and assisted two of their own while they were out east in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. The power of community, experience, connecting us all.
And Mike, for you, your feelings on the original Twister.
So, believe it or not, I just watched the original for the first time the night before I saw the sequel. Before this, really my only association with the property was that old Universal ride from like way back in like the late 90s. Hold on one sec.
Hello.
The wonders of live television, ladies
Yep.
and gentlemen. While Mike does that, I'll give my general. Oh no, he's back.
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah, other than that Universal ride, which I don't have the most vivid memories, but it was that and the Universal tour that had a little bit of Twisters. That was like where I most was associated with the property. And then of course, an article came up recently in the trades that, you know, kind of went over some production stuff, like how Steven Spielberg flew to the set for like 15 minutes just to yell at Jan de Baan for you know, an unsafe film production, because, you know, ever since the Twilight Zone, he's been very cognizant of safety on film sets. So hearing that bit of news was kind of fun. But as for the movie itself, it's a classic. I can see exactly why people love it. I love the ensemble, the romantic leads, Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt, and Philip Seymour Hoffman, who is just a delight every time he's on screen. So yeah, this one is a classic for a reason.
Yeah, for me, I didn't grow up with the original Twister. I didn't even go on the it's not really a ride, it's an experience. I didn't go on it because I haven't been to Universal many times. I was there with my siblings to go on it, but it was kind of near the end of our day, and I was just kind of theme parked out, and I was like, oh, Twister ride, I don't really want to. Again, if I knew what it was, I probably would have went, but since I was thinking it was a ride, I was like, I don't really want to sit on a, you know, thing and just be spun around right now. So I didn't see the movie growing up. I saw the movie about 3-4 years ago. And the reason why I saw it was when my old job went remote, I still was kind of prone to like waking up kind of around the time when I had to drive in. So I'd be up a little early, you know, I'd be scrolling through social media or whatever. And I get these like Facebook movie groups sometimes and some of their posts. And one of them was about like 10 things you didn't know about the movie Twister. Now, mind you, to this point, my only kind of knowledge of Twister was the Nostalgia Critic review, which is still one of my favorite reviews. So I decided, whatever, I read it and it had some interesting things in it. I was like, this movie sounds interesting. And I looked it up and it was on Netflix. So after work that day, I watched it. And I loved it. It was great. It was fantastic. So much fun. As he said, Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt. It's probably my favorite Bill Paxton role of his. You know, where he has the very difficult challenge of playing a character named Bill. But Jamie Gertz is also great in it. You mentioned some of the other fun people. Jamie Gertz, I love her. She's a really fun character that like you think is gonna be a stick in the mud, but she's not. She kind of just feels like a normal person trusted in this world. Obviously it's Spielberg and Michael Crichton teaming up again because Michael Crichton and his wife wrote the movie. And Spielberg producing. This was during that era of the 90s, to where Spielberg really became like, you know, in the 80s and 90s, he really took his powers to like being a producer, and much like George Lucas on Indiana Jones, he wasn't just here's some money and you can throw my name on it. Like he was very involved in it. And according to a story from one of the stars of this movie, was also apparently very involved in Twisters. So I love the movie, super fun. And now we have a sort of kind of sequel. Basically it's a sort of kind of sequel because apart from, and this is not a spoiler because it's in all the trailers, apart from the Dorothy machine appearing at the beginning of this movie, there's nothing else they do to connect Twisters to Twister. Helen Hunt does not play Daisy Edgar Jones's mother. There's no reference to Bill Paxton. There's no picture of Dusty in some cafe somewhere. Like it's very much feels like they kind of were just like, Twister, that was a really cool movie. We'd like to kind of do a movie in that universe, but not have to do like a legacy sequel because it's not a legacy sequel really. But let's get into that. Mike, I'm going to ask you first, spoiler free. What are your general thoughts on this movie?
My general thoughts are it's a lot of fun. I saw this in Dolby, which is just kind of my go-to format for these big summer blockbusters. And I went in with kind of like medium expectations just because I was a big fan of Lee Isaac Chung's last movie, Minari, which was up for a handful of Academy Awards. But aside from that, he is a filmmaker from Middle America. So he was kind of the perfect choice to direct a movie about Middle America and about that region and the whole culture with tornadoes and storm chasers and all of that.
Tommy, your general thoughts on Twisters?
Well, this movie is, when I think back on it, it's a reminder of what the cinematic experience is all about. And while I was fortunate enough to witness Twisters in the expanded format of IMAX, I found myself questioning it, however, as the Cinemark, where I viewed Twisters, also promoted the experience through their Cinemark XD format. And once my viewing concluded, I exited the theater and could hear from a specific scene, which we'll go into in our spoiler review, play out. And long story short, as I work Sinopolis, and which we currently are showcasing Twisters, and I'm able to have fun with the guests and emphasize the experience they're about to have with it, I realize that one can still be able to enjoy Twisters not merely in an expanded format such as IMAX, for example, or even Dolby, as you saw it in Mike, but through standard format, it's that experience that lives within the viewer forever. And that's what I think the biggest takeaway from this is. And of course the Summer of Powell continues to gain steam. And from a story standpoint, yeah, it's what I loved about it is that it's standalone, where you don't have to watch the original to watch this one. In the case of the little tidbits, like you were saying about Dorothy, or even the levels of tornado, but and even in moments of cheese, specifically in the falling action, you are really able to take away the power of that experience. That's what I really think makes this movie so special.
Yeah, for me, my sort of general thoughts on this were, you can hear it on my podcast on Take 3 Simple Tricks and Nonsense. When the trailer first came out, me and Abe talked about it, and I was somewhat interested. I really love the original. I think that's why I was just like, eh. And I believe I ever said it on air off here, but I did say to my podcast partner and buddy Abe, I said, I think I'm just going to wait for this one to rent, which I do with some movies. Some movies I'm just like, I don't need to spend the money to go and see theater. And then I believe it was before the Phantom Menace re-release, I want to say they had the trailer. And I saw that in the movie theater, and I went, oh, okay. I'm seeing this for 3 reasons. I told Mike the reasons. I'm not going to repeat them on air. Just because one's a joke. It's not actually really a joke, but we'll get into that maybe a little later. I was like, I'm going to see this in theater, and I saw it in Dolby too, because that's my preferred format to see any movie in, is Dolby. And yeah, I was just, I said it in my my review that I put on, my socials and everything. I said, thank God people still know how to make summer blockbusters, because in a time to where blockbuster is almost at this point seeming synonymous with like comic book movie, it's nice to know that, you know, like there's still people who are doing like Top Gun Maverick and Twisters, where it's like, okay, like they're more realistic. Like obviously these aren't really super realistic, but they're not comic book movies or science fiction movies. And obviously I love that stuff, but it's nice to just have these types of summer blockbusters out there with an engaging, you know, with engaging characters, with some good spectacle to it. The fact that this movie was filmed on 35 millimeter is awesome. That's really great. I think that definitely means when it comes to home viewing, that it's going to still look really good. Because like I can't wait to get the Blu-ray of this, just because like silly people don't understand that like 35 millimeter is 4K just naturally. So that's why, like, if you get an old movie like Jaws or something, so long as the print is really good, it looks amazing, even though it's not 4K, because it is 4K. Digital movies don't always look that great, and they also don't blend well with CGI, whereas film does. So this movie, for all time, is going to look great. So I'm really happy with that. Now we're going to move into spoiler territory. I think I have a perfect place to start with that is with the characters. Now, like the last movie, there are quite a few characters. It's a rather large cast, but there's really only 3 characters that I think we need to focus on. So let's start with Javi, who is played by Anthony Ramos, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So Tommy, your feelings on Tommy, your feelings on Javi.
Well, like you were saying, you know, Anthony Ramos is a good character, and he's really, you know, gradually coming into the limelight with supporting roles. Of course, he's best known for his portrayal for his ensemble role in Hamilton on Broadway before expanding on to other roles. And this really gives him this role really gives him an opportunity to come into his own. And while it's fascinating to see a character go through their own sort of learning experience, if you will, where they're confident, they believe they're doing the right thing, but at the same time, they kind of got lost along the way before ultimately realizing what it was that they were doing. Even though they were doing it all along, they just realized the right and the wrong ways of going about it. So I really found that fascinating about the Javi character, and it was so cool to see him reunited with Kate, the Daisy Edgar Jones character, and how that dynamic of that relationship really stood on its own and helped elevate the movie into something really further special to what it is.
Mike, your feelings on Javi?
I thought Anthony Ramos did a great job with the performance. I liked his introduction in the opening sequence.
Yeah.
Like just that opening sequence in general, I thought was just really well done. The visual effects looked amazing. You could really feel the stakes in the mission that they were embarking on. As the story was progressing, there was a point where I wasn't really a fan of the direction his character was headed in, especially as he got like deeper into like the more the technology side of his company and like the business side. But once they are reunited in the third act, that's when he really started to be like, oh, okay, he's a real one, not like his business partner and Marshall Riggs,
yeah,
who is probably the one character I just didn't really care for.
And from a story construction standpoint, if I can cut in, from a story construction standpoint, you think that's what I found so fascinating about this character, because he really does care about. He really is a secondary protagonistic character, even though like he's got a specific constructive undertones to his character, and specifically like because he's at the end of the day he's thinking about not only Kate specifically but his business, and with this partner that's funding him, and like thinking like he's left to make that choice in that line where he drives off, tell Riggs we're done. And that's and at the same time, that's one of the, when he shows up to the town, but that was what I was saying earlier in the falling action, when he just showed up to save the day, as as cheesy as that moment was, it was still like, you still like had a fist pump, like it was a fist pump type of moment that he made it, and he was back on the good side. And even though the company even though he wasn't wearing like that shirt specifically, I'd like to believe that they were all able to come together to power forward for the right reasons and not the wrong reasons.
Yeah, for me with his character, it was interesting because as Mike said, in the opening scene, he's kind of, he's like snacking, and he's kind of like, oh, let's go back to sleep, and then we get reintroduced to him, in the 5 years later, and he said he's been in the military, and now he's doing this sort of like new research. As the film went on, I kind of started to go, oh, he's the Jonas of this movie. Okay, I get it. He does not really, he's in it for more monetary purposes and not so much, people. And even as we get closer towards the end of the movie, and the F5 is coming in, and when the car gets flipped, I went, oh, okay, this is the same thing with Jonas. This is the comeuppance of the villain who was chasing the storms for all the wrong reasons. And then he didn't die. And I went, okay. And then he shows up at the end, and I went, all right, he gets his redemption arc, I suppose. I honestly was very surprised that they leave the rest, like the one guy who was kind of, I guess he would have been number 2 to Javi in the sort of group. I'm really surprised that that's the last we see of them, that they don't give us the like classic, like, oh, the bad guy's going to die. Which I guess you could say maybe they did that because that would feel too on the nose to the original.
Exactly.
And maybe they were trying to, which I do think they will get into more. I think they do a good job of standing alone. But his character overall, I wouldn't say he's a lead. Out of the secondary characters, he's the most boring to me. He just exists to really honestly just kind of jumpstart Kate's story. He plays it well, and I get that, like, these are, in these types of movies, these are like the Frank Rich roles, to where it's like, yeah, your character does kind of just exist to get the plot rolling, but it was fine. But we move on, and I honestly don't remember who I have next. There we go. We move on, and we have Glenn Powell as Tyler Owens, the Tornado Wrangler. So Mike, your thoughts and feelings on this character?
He's great. The second that he's introduced, when they're in the I don't know if that's like a gas station or just a parking lot, but
like
his as soon as he's introduced, that's when the film really comes to life. I mean, between the opening sequence and the admittedly a little bit dragging of a reintroduction to Kate and Javi. Once we meet Tyler and his Tornado Wrangler crew, that's when the movie for me really came alive, and I like what his character brings to the table. He's not like, he is a like a YouTube influencer, but he's also not dumb. He has a lot of intelligence with like meteorology, and we'll get to maybe the ending later, but I'm going to refer to him as one of the romantic leads, because anyone with eyes and ears and anyone who's watched a movie knows how much chemistry that he has with Kate.
Oh yeah, he's 100% them romantically, and we'll talk about that later. For me, it's so funny because obviously, I know Glenn Powell mainly from Top Gun Maverick. And so when I saw the trailers and stuff, I was excited to see him in there. But when you watch the trailers and even his intro, which again is something I really like about this movie, you think you know where his character is going. You think that he is just this stupid like influencer storm chaser who slaps his shirt on, his face on the t-shirt and like all that. And then the first kind of moment we get of maybe that's not it is when Kate is talking to his crew about like how they all met and everything, and his sort of number two guy is like, oh well, Tyler studied meteorology. They're like, oh okay, like because you're not really sure in that first meeting between him and Kate if he actually knows what he's doing or not, and then to learn like, oh no, he actually does have a background in this stuff. But then of course it's that moment when Kate and Javi go to the town. And again, what I like about it is at first Kate thinks she still hasn't figured out because she sees them selling the t-shirts and she's like, oh, look at the jerk influencer who shows up to a town that has literally lost a ton of stuff and he's selling his shirts and everything. And then he's looking for the dog, and then a member of his crew like explains to Kate that like, oh no, like we sell this stuff to like make money so we could give these people food and everything. And it's great. And Powell plays it so well to where like he still has that cocky charisma, but like once those layers are revealed, it's one of those things where like he's introduced and you kind of already like him because he's got that movie star charisma, but you sort of feel bad when you're with King, you think he's bad. So when you learn these things about him, you're like, oh no, like when he shows up to Kate's farm, you're like, yay, I'm glad that this is happening. And then as the relationship with Kate develops, you're like, good, because this is a freaking good dude, and he also looks like Glenn Powell. So like, go Kate. I said to Mike, I really think I don't want to ever definitively say things like this because I don't think it's fair to do, but like if there was a modern day Harrison Ford type, I think Glenn Powell is with like Top Gun Maverick and with this. I think he's starting to slip into that to where it's like he's able to play cocky, charismatic, but these characters that have layers to him extremely well. And I'm fascinated to see after Twisters what he kind of follows up with his next project. But Tommy, your feelings on Tyler?
Well, he's a modern day Glenn Powell type. That's number one. Number two, I would say, the Tyler Owens is something that really emphasized. Like, and I kept telling myself after this, like, this is the type of movie character that Tommy Hughes grew up with. And I made the joke in our private chat. Is it too late to say that I want to be Glenn Powell when I grow up? Like, it's one of the like that trademark phrase. If you feel it, chase it. Like that's one of the most quotable lines and one can use not only to quote this movie, but to look at any aspect in life and their ability to power forward. And to see Glenn Powell take the ball, run with it, and the chemistry that he has with Daisy Edgar Jones is something that one can really look at from that story construction standpoint, especially from a performers plural, looking from page to screen. Because even though what I loved about this relationship is even though they were able to elevate it and bring it to life, they didn't have it left it to where it wasn't something that the characters could like. They left it to where it was like it could still be ambiguous. It could still be ambiguous for the viewer to figure out on his own, like, did they or didn't they? But it still didn't deviate from the story itself. And I absolutely love that about the movie. And I'm so stoked that Glenn Powell is really coming into his own as one of Hollywood's leading men as a result of this. Because, I mean, going back on Cinemark, ironically enough, my first Cinemark experience was back in 2003, where Spy Kids 3D Game Over, and now look at how far he's come, how he's paid his dues, made it to this that goes back to the power of the cinematic experience, where memories that last a lifetime. Ironically enough, it was a Cinemark where I saw Twisters in IMAX. So, and I just absolutely love it. I love it. I'm proud of him for all that he's done, and I hope that he continues to maintain that stability in Hollywood and be that good guy that everyone sees him as.
Yeah, definitely. And just one kind of last thing on more Glenn Powell is, it's funny. I was watching an interview he did. I'm not sure if this was for Twisters or not, but he was talking about how he had auditioned for Rooster in Top Gun Maverick and had lost out to it, Miles Teller. And he tells the story of meeting with Jerry Bruckheimer and Tom Cruise. And Tom Cruise asked him, like, what kind of career do you want? And he said, I want like your career. I want to like make, great movies and everything. And Tom Cruise was like, I don't make great movies. I take cool movies and I elevate them. And I almost, and that was obvious. And I'm paraphrasing. Find the interview online yourself. And obviously that's what he did with Hangman. He took his secondary character and he became my favorite character from that movie. And I can almost feel like him reading the script to this, going like, man, that just seems like a cool movie. And I feel like I can elevate this. And he did. Like, in a lesser actor's hands, Tyler is not nearly as compelling as a character. It would almost feel boring, to see his kind of arc and the layers and everything. It almost seem like formulaic and boring. But when you get good actors, speaking of good actors, we have the lead of our film, Daisy Edgar Jones as Kate. So for me, I'm not really familiar with Daisy's previous work. So this is kind of my introduction to her, but she was wonderful. I think she really sold science well, and that's not an easy thing to do, to make it seem like you know what you're talking about when, as far as I'm aware, Daisy Edgar Jones does not have a background in meteorology. But she sells it really well, and I think along with that, in the beginning of the movie, like her, the scenes in New York City, like she does sell someone who is still very much hurt by a bad choice that she made that cost her a lot, and that sort of fear and that sort of coupled with the first sort of tornado she chases. And as the movie continues, I like how we see the strength and sort of the drive in her come back, and sort of the real, when she goes back to the farm and she goes to the town, like all these things of like understanding the reason why she got into this was caring about people and wanting to help people and all that. And then, we talked about already with Tyler, but that relationship with Tyler, it feels real because there is almost like, that attraction of just like when you meet somebody who is into the same stuff you're into, and they're also into it in the same way you're into it. Like when they're talking about meteorology, like she likes that. Like you can tell that, like, since whoever that dude in the beginning was, and in wherever she was working in New York City, like everybody else was dumber than her. And so now she's finally met her sort of mental equal, and she likes that. But aside from that, she had a great fun to her character. She had a great spark, and that heart I really loved, throughout the whole movie that we saw with her. I thought that was really beautiful, and it made her a compelling lead, which is what you need in these types of movies. Tommy, your feelings on Kate?
I like Kate a lot, and it's really good that they opted to choose her character arc as the leading driving force in this story. And what I really admired about it was the guilt, and as the story progressed, being able to overcome that feeling of overcome that emotional trauma, that PTSD. Like, you take that experience, that passion, and use it and still be able to utilize it in the sense of being a superpower and being able to move forward, which was what led her to New York, but then being able to go back and overcome that I wouldn't say quite by accident overcome her fear, because she needed to. That's one of the big I guess forgivable moments of the story construction was, the Hobby character not recognizing such. But over time, I think there was a moment where he mentioned something of the sort, to be not able to, recognize the things that Kate's character might be going through, being back in that environment and trying to overcome the emotional distress and the panic attack, especially in the first storm, when she is back in Oklahoma. As the story progressed, and when she's in the bar with Tyler Owens, and she says the reason why she's consumed with guilt, it was because she got it wrong. That moment really stood out. Like, there was hope. It provided a sense of hope that she would be able to make it and overcome it. And despite the predictability in various formats of the story and where it was going, one was still able to feel that connection and the realism behind what the character is going through and how it was portrayed. And I really admired the realism that Daisy Edgar Jones was able to bring to that.
Definitely. Mike, your feelings on Kate?
Going back to what you said about heart, she really is the heart of the movie, because she's out of the the three main characters, she's the one who's really dealing with a lot of that survivor's guilt, that I don't want to say inability to move on, but she's going through a lot of trauma over what happened to pretty much everyone from that opening sequence. And it's just really great to see her overcoming that throughout the sequence of events, to see her sort of rediscover her love for storm chasing and getting a chance to actually make a difference in the third act. I think, as we mentioned earlier, the chemistry she has with Tyler is just incredible. It's great that she has like someone to talk to, someone who kind of understands and really has the same passion for meteorology, and does a lot to help her kind of get past the survivor's guilt and move forward with her life.
Yeah, definitely. Like, that whole conversation they have at the rodeo when Tyler's talking about how he used to be a bull rider, and that whole thing of like, you don't face your fears, you ride it. Like, and again, you can read into that line in a lot of different ways, but I think it is almost like your fears are still there. Like, you don't ignore your fears. It's okay to have fears, but you kind of just go with it and to the best of your abilities. And I agree. I think that's a great little connective moment of, as compared to the sort of moment sort of before that with Javi, when she sort of is talking to him and everything, and he calls her out for, getting their friends killed. Tyler, on the other hand, is just like, it's okay that you're afraid. I'm afraid too, in a way.
Absolutely.
So we can kind of sort of move off the characters and kind of just, now we're in spoiler mode. I think, we're talking about a relationship, so I think an interesting place to sort of start is almost the end, because this is one of the most oddly talked about things about this movie, is of course the fact that there is no kiss between Kate and Tyler. Now, I have to be honest, I saw this movie on Monday, and gets to the ending to where Kate's going back home to New York and Tyler's there. Javi drops her off, but Tyler's there to see her off. In a very funny scene to where the airport security is kind of telling him he's going to be towed and everything, and then she tells him, if you're feeling it, you got chasing. She goes inside, and then he goes after her, and I'm thinking, look, this movie, It's very classic blockbuster. She, he's going after her in the airport. That's how it's gonna end. And then it doesn't. I went, that's a bit weird. Like, I didn't hate it. It did how it ended, I think, was perfectly fine. I'm just like, it just feels like it was setting up for something. And then Daisy Edgar Jones said that might have been a Spielberg decision to remove that. I forget what her reasoning behind that was, or what she thought. I think maybe Spielberg thought it was too cliche, which maybe, but it's funny. Me and Manning Franks on Take 3, we did our James Bond retrospective, and we talked about, in all the movies, Bond always having to wind up with the Bond girl, even if sometimes it doesn't make sense. But that is kind of the appeal of these types of movies. Even if you're going back to the original Twister, is like, yeah, you're going to meet these two characters and you're going to be there for the meet cute and it's going to be nice. And then they're going to get together and they're going to kiss at the very end. Like, that's what we come here for. So it was weird to sort of remove that. Tommy, so kind of again, spoiler free, go into it as deep or as low as you want. Kind of not just the kiss, just kind of that relationship overall. If you don't have a lot to, yeah, I know we kind of mentioned it, so you can be as brief or in depth as you want with that.
Yeah, when I think about the emotional, the trauma, the PTSD, however one wants to classify it, if they were a psychologist, I think back to the beginning of the movie when she not only lost her friend, she lost her boyfriend as well. And from that moment, I think as the undertones in her relationship with Tyler Owens come to light, I think that it was I thought that was a welcomed twist. Like, it wasn't like, even though, like I was saying earlier, the undertones were there, it didn't like force the matter. Like, it didn't go that extra mile. Like, we already had a few cheesy moments. Like, for example, I mentioned earlier, Javi coming in to save the day in the final act, the third act, I should say. But when we had, but it would have been, I think it would have been too much cheese. And even though, like, the original did have its moments of cheese, it's a different age, a different time, and it didn't have like it would have been a classic Hollywood ending, yes, but like, look at something like, I'll use a similar, albeit completely different set of circumstances, and the first thing I thought of was the ending of La La Land, where it wasn't, where like where those two characters, like, they came together and they saw like what life could have been, but it wasn't. And so even though we still had the happy ending, like, you think of how the movie was in the beginning of the movie, and then it was just like, from that character aspect, would have been like, well, moved on, it's been 5 years, like, it wouldn't have, I don't think it would have looked good or matched with the nature of the characters in that sense. Could it have still worked? Yes, but it would have deviated the story a little bit in that respect. So I'm actually glad that they decided to go down the route that they did.
Definitely good points. Mike, your feelings on kind of the relationship overall?
I've kind of gone back and forth, specifically when it comes to having a kiss or not having a kiss. The relationship, I still think, within like the movie itself, they did a really good job handling their dynamic. And one scene that I really liked was when Kate comes back home, reconciles with her mom, and then Tyler comes in, and that's when they start scheming ways to improve upon Kate's like designs for taming the storm. I thought after that moment that was going to like crystallize their relationship, and we would get something like the kiss at the end. So the fact that we didn't, for me, kind of feels like ending a song on like on the minor sixth as opposed to the major eighth. A little bit of music theory for you nerds out there. But like it doesn't make or break the movie to not have the kiss.
Yeah,
it's just
there still is very much a relationship, and I think if I've only seen the movie once. If I'm remembering correctly, when they do destroy the one tornado, and she's kind of taking the picture, smiling, they do have that moment of Tyler kind of looking at her with a nice gaze on his, Glenn Powell doing that thing. And again, you go back to I do like that, and again, I think that's why I like. What I also like about their relationship is it's not that very boring, like, oh, you're cute. Oh, you're cute. We should date. Like, I like how it's the one I always use as sort of a comparative is Hoosiers with Gene Hackman and Barbara Hershey, to where it's like when those characters meet, like there's animosity. Like their first meeting is her, and him kind of having that like back and forth about, the dandelions and all that. And that's fun because like it's a little boring when you just get two characters or just like, Barry and Betty Lou. And it's like, oh gosh darn, you're so cute. Oh, you're a star of the basketball team. We should go study together. It's like it's kind of nice when you just have like you kind of seem like a cocky dick. You're just a city girl. You don't know what you're talking about. And then the layers of these characters form and they do things like Tyler shows up with the pizza. Like that's a great little moment. And then even her slamming the door in his face and then opening it up. And you're right. Yeah. That scene in the farm to where like he finds her notebooks and at first she doesn't want him to read it. And but the fact that he not only believes in it, but also wants to help her and be like, no, this can work. We just need to like, I can put this in my laptop and we can get like a model made. Like, I think again, you have those moments of both of the characters. So we mentioned it. Let's talk about that opening. Which is a very, if you watch enough of these blockbusters, all three of those characters are dead from like the second Daisy Edgar Jones gives that guy in the tent a kiss. I'm like, you're not making it out of this at all. Not at all. It's a very just classic, like, disaster movie opening. So what are your guys' kind of like feelings on that? I think it did work. I think it did show the veracity of a tornado very well off the start. Like, and it's not even the two kind of whatever characters who die. It's really her boyfriend when he's like on top of her and then he just gets swept under, which by the way, I do hope that anybody watches this movie and watches, let's say, Man of Steel, to where during a tornado, they also get under an underpass. If you can help it, do not get under an underpass because it's literally just a tunnel of wind.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do it, please. Yeah. Okay. But your guys' kind of feelings on that opening, did you like? I think overall it worked for me, even though it was a little bit too for me. It worked, but it was a little bit too natural disaster Hollywood movie opening. You're
not wrong. I think what you said earlier about the deaths in even that exact sequence felt a bit telegraphed. But again, that's kind of to be expected given A, you don't see those other characters anywhere else in the marketing, and B, while this isn't like a 1v1 comparison to how the original started, in fact, I think the opening in the original film is kind of, it's scarier because Helen Hunt's character is much younger and
Alexa Penavega.
Yeah, and also the original I think works a little bit more because one, there is that like it is a child, and two, I think that one also works a little bit more because it's not as, the twister is not as upfront. Like it's not until it really rips the door off because you get the thunder and you get everything and you get Rusty Schwimmer just randomly showing up in that movie. She's in the room with Joe, and then the dad comes in. It's like we got to get downstairs, and they run past the TV, and it's like we have it's an F5, whatever, and then they get into the storm cellar. I think it feels, whereas here it's like we see the big tornado and they throw the stuff up into it, so it's I think the original is just a little bit stronger with that.
Well, it's not until Kate realizes that, because it was only supposed to be, because had she anticipated it would become an EF5, the moment she realizes this is an EF5, that's when you're like, all right, it just hit the fan. So had they had the character known that was going to transpire, they would never have done what they were doing that day. So that it's just fascinating to see that moment transpire, come to life, and how that moment gradually played a role in that character. And not to skip ahead in a moment, but I think what debatably would be the trademark scene of the movie was the rodeo tornado. And that moment where they're hiding in the pool, and it's the mom that's holding on to her daughter from the motel and saying it's okay, Kate. So ironically enough, that the daughter's name was Kate. I was just like, oof, that's the moment that the character needed to really
well, yeah, that's a good moment that works, because she says, the mom is saying to the daughter, it's okay, I got you, which is the exact same thing Kate's boyfriend said. It's like top 10 moments before they hit the curb, or whatever that meme is. So that even adds to the trauma. I will say, before I move on to our next point, I just want to say this movie, and we'll get to it more at the end, does not fully defeat the original. The one thing it does a lot better than the original is explaining the differences between tornadoes. Because in the original, there's the steak and egg scene, to where Jamie Gertz is asking about like the difference, and they kind of are just like, oh yeah, it seems like an F1 there's a solid F2, and no, it's an F4, and then like Bill Paxton sort of explains it, and then she's just like, anybody seen an F5? And they're like, only one of us has seen an F5. And it's like, okay, but what is that? Oh, yeah, F5. Finger of God. It's like, okay, but what do you mean? So I like the fact that in this one, and again, they do it in a very streamlined, easy way, which is like they have kids and they're explaining, the difference. But it's nice for even as someone who's seen the original to just be like, okay, now I clearly understand what, like, obviously watching the original, I know that like it's power and all this, but they really get into it. I did appreciate being a New Yorker, that they talk about that tornadoes rarely ever happen, which just made me really, really happy to be a New Yorker
about that. So,
Michael, have you live in this world to where Twisters is so accurate with that statement, please?
No. I was just going to say that last Tuesday, there was a tornado that hit the town next to mine. Rome, New York got hit with, I think it was either an F1 or an F2. And of course, over in my neck of the woods, we had just like huge downpour, heavy thunderstorms. It was not a pretty picture.
Yeah, let me just live in my own world.
Watch for the warning.
But now, sir, we move on. I think let's talk about, we can include the sort of climax in this, but I want to talk about your guys' feelings on the spectacle of this movie, the tornado sequences. Tommy, I'm going to go to you first. Your sort of overall feelings, and include with that, because obviously the spectacle is all wrapped up in the climax.
Yeah, and this, like, and that's why I was saying the scene of the movie, I think, is not the final storm, but the penultimate storm, which that rodeo tornado, which was an EF4, it was really like seeing that moment play out, and the build up to it. The visual effects were absolutely phenomenal. The real life set pieces, no CGI in those respects. It was just like the original in that respect. And seeing that moment where they finally make it to the pool, and they hold on for dear life. And when I saw that moment in IMAX, I saw that play out, and the spectacle. I was so glad, because I was hesitant. Because I said, do I see it in IMAX, or do I see it because Cinemark XD they were showing in that they were promoting that particular format the last time I was at Cinemark, which was the first time in many years I went to a Cinemark. Nonetheless, when I was coming out of my IMAX screening, you could hear from the sound that it was the rodeo tornado was beginning. So I took a look around, and no one's supposed to do this, but I just took a peek in to see if it would make a difference. And the sound was a little elevated, but the smaller screen in that moment did end up making a difference in that respect. And even though it was expanded, it wasn't filmed for IMAX, it was expanded for it. Like you can really see that being a part of that IMAX screening was such a difference maker. And the only difference that I said in my social media review, the only difference that would have elevated it further was if the IMAX theater had D-box seats. And I went to and it was another live stream later that night where some critic friends of ours were talking about the 4DX experience, and I was like, no, because it's like now I gotta get in the car and drive. I don't know how far away the closest Regal is from my neck of the woods, but if I was fortunate to see it in 4DX, I would absolutely jump on that opportunity as well, because to really feel the power and that immersive experience, it's, even though I do believe that Twisters will have the same generational pull as its predecessor, going back from discovery on home media or reruns on television or even on streaming, for example, I do believe that it will still, that being able to experience a movie such as this in the theater will really leave that profound impact on the viewer for the rest of their life, for years to come.
Mike, your general feelings on the spectacle of the movie overall.
I can't speak to any other theater chain, but what I love about my Dolby theater, or my chain is Marquee Cinemas, and we have our Dolby is just MXC. It stands for Marquee Extreme Cinema.
Nice.
And part of the reason why that is my preferred choice for these big blockbusters is the screen is larger, not quite IMAX, but like kind of somewhere in between. But it's the Dolby stereos that really kind of help you get immersed in the action, in the peril of the storms and all of that. And I think the combination of shooting the film on 35 millimeter, which is a good job of blending in the CG of the actual storms, but also the practical effects of, chairs and the bricks from the movie theater flying all over the place. The fire sequence during like the start of the third act was amazing to see. All of that makes movies like this worth it, when you have like the spectacle on top of just great characters that you want to see make it out of these perilous situations.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is a part of it, and we talked about it, is when you have the great characters, great spectacle without great characters is kind of pointless. It's, you know, and I think, you know, you have those opening sequences to sort of set everything up, but the really big stuff does not come until you really start to know Kate and Tyler's characters. Like the rodeo sequence, you have that entire discussion between those two characters, and then it happens. So now you're invested in them as individuals, as a sort of blossoming couple that are now thrown into this, and it's great. It's great to sort of see the building, the fear of what is to come, and running around. It's obviously it's very reminiscent of the drive-in sequence from the original movie. And yeah, when they get into the, you know, when they get into the pool, and there's the hotel, you know, the motel worker who is, you know, Tyler goes after, and he gets pulled up, and then Tyler's trying to go back, and the kind of, you know, the trucker, you know, I think the hitch kind of falls in and almost goes after him. Like it's all really well done, and you find yourself, and again, you kind of we alluded to this with our discussion at the beginning. You kind of know the movie, and you're like, if they're going to kill off Glenn Powell, it's not going to be here. But you still have those moments of like, ooh. I agree. So I AMC theaters is my theater of choice, and I go to their Dolby theater, and it's fantastic for these types of movies. They have, you know, moving audio, so you literally, as things are flying over, you hear it kind of pass over your head, and it's just spectacular and so much fun, and it makes these movies so much better. And again, we talked about it, but being filmed on 35 millimeter just looks crisper. And I think that I feel kind of like the original Twister. I feel like this is going to be one of those movies that, while yes, the movie theater is always going to be the best way to see these movies, I think like the original Twister, just with, again, being filmed on 35 millimeter and all, you know, in the mix and everything, I think it's like you have a good TV and a good sound system. I think if you get a Blu-ray or 4K copy of Twisters, you're going to be okay come, you know, home viewing, which is great, because I already know that this is going to be one of those movies that, you know, when it goes on sale and I go to Walmart or Target to pick it up, I have a feeling it's not going to be one of those movies that you buy for your collection and kind of sits there for a little bit. This is definitely going to be like, get home and like that night, put it in just to kind of see how it feels with my TV and my sound system. But we've sort of talked about the cinematic experience and everything, and now I think that kind of leads me into Deadpool and Wolverine is coming out this weekend, which means, sadly, with just how, at least around me, how it goes is this does mean Twisters is about to be pushed out of IMAX and Dolby and Realty 3D and all those types of premium formats, because that's just how it goes. So, Mike, I'm going to start with you. And again, I don't really care about box office numbers or anything like that. Deadpool and Wolverine, do you think that Deadpool and Wolverine's release is going to make Twisters, I don't want to say forgotten, but just kind of like a blimp in the summer blockbuster, this summer's blockbusters? Or do you think it's going to have legs, and there's still going to be people who are going to go and see it a second time this weekend? Or, you know, or do you think that it's just like, hey, it had its time and it was really cool to see in theaters, but it's kind of done now?
That's a good question, because, again, kind of like what you said, I before we went live, I looked at my theater's website and noticed that Deadpool and Wolverine took all of the premium, slots. Like, all of the showtimes are for the two Dolby screens are taken. So that's going to hurt Twisters in terms of its second weekend hold. But as far as like the fond memories that people have of it, I don't think just because we've got like a juggernaut like Deadpool and Wolverine that Twisters is going to be like immediately forgotten, like the way Andy forgets about Woody in the Toy Story montage. I think there's enough substance in the movie that those who didn't get a chance to see it opening weekend are going to want to go, for weeks down the road. How it does box office wise, that kind of remains to be seen. Because,
but we're not studios, so I don't really care how much money this shit makes. So, Tommy, same question to you.
I think that the percentage drop, I think is going to show. I don't believe that it would be like I don't believe it'll be like numbers in the vein of Hulk from 2003 or Friday the 13th from 2009 as far as how far they fall. That said, I still believe that even though Deadpool Wolverine is going to come like a bulldozer, knock everybody out of the premium format, like you were saying, Mike, I do believe that some in the larger markets, some secondary showings in say like a Dolby theater, or even an IMAX screen, like it's say like morning showings, for example, that I do believe that would still be possible in the sense, depending on where you live. But I think long term, like everyone's going out to see it now, so that way they won't have to worry about it. I do think that people will end up seeing it in case they don't get into Deadpool Wolverine for whatever reason. It's like, you think of in the sense of Inside Out 2 still drawing good numbers with Despicable Me 4 coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Anything's possible, and at the same time, the rating could also play a big role into it as well. So that's, I mean, I do believe that this has the potential. I mean, taking inflation and those numbers in, that this does have the potential to draw Deadpool Wolverine does, for that matter, record numbers on that level. That said, I do think if we're looking at a podium for numbers, Deadpool Wolverine, Twisters, and then Inside Out 2, and then going from there. That's the way I think it'll be. But I don't believe the percentage drop will be as big as it could be in that respect. Probably. I'm not even gonna say a number because I'll probably end up being wrong.
Yeah, for me, I think, and again, this is just like an unfortunate way of how these theater chains treat it, is like, I know at my AMC, we only have one Dolby theater, we have one IMAX. Yeah. It does suck that when the new movie comes in, the old movie just gets pushed out. I mean, you look at this, because I know that like, Deadpool Wolverine opens Friday, but I'm sure like around me, you guys have it too. All these screens start on Thursday. Mm-hmm. So we really look at that. Twisters hasn't even had a week in the premium, formats, and it's already pushed out. And so I think this movie, very much like Top Gun Maverick a couple of years ago, I personally believe that I think the goodwill and the talking about this movie is what's going to help it. Because I remember when I went to see Top Gun Maverick the second time, it was a couple weeks into its showing, and it was well out of I forget what had replaced it, but it was already well out of its premium sort of screens, but people still wanted to go and see it. And I think it's nice to have this movie around the time of Deadpool and Wolverine, because I think you're going to have people who maybe aren't super interested in Deadpool and Wolverine, who still want to go and have a good summer blockbuster experience. I have to wait a week to see Deadpool and Wolverine, so maybe if I'm bored on Saturday, I might go and see Twisters again, because maybe it's going to be a really quiet screening. Who knows? But I think it is nice to sort of have these types of movies, that, but it will be interesting. I will say, I think this is going to be a movie when it becomes available for home viewing. I think we're going to get discussions of it again. Hopefully not a sequel. I don't really think we need a sequel to this, just like we didn't really need a sequel to the original. But if that happens, fine. But overall, I think sort of start our sort of wrap up thoughts, I just want to say something that I did appreciate, and the director talked about this, is, in this day and age, this movie could have very easily been the climate change is wrong. It's the fossil fuels there. And it wasn't. Like, it was just like, hey, we're just going to have a fun Twister movie, right, guys? COVID doesn't exist in this universe. Hey, like, it's nice to have those movies. But there is just one more thing I want to say. We talk about the rodeo sequence. I mean, compared to the drive-in from the original. In both cases, they continually talk about, this is a record-breaking number of storm outbreaks, all this. Like, how? They're still allowing shit like rodeos and drive-in movies. Like, shouldn't there be a state of emergency? Shouldn't it be like, stay in your house unless you have to be? That way, if a tornado does start hit, you can quickly get to a shelter and not like be at a rodeo in the middle of the open elements. It's just those fun, silly little disaster movie things that in the real world don't really make that much sense. But Tommy, I'm gonna ask you first. Your kind of wrap up final thoughts on Twisters.
I'll say this, going back real quick to Deadpool Wolverine, real fast before I do get my final thoughts. Think about the marketability that both are doing. Because you were talking with it's AMC, I believe, that's doing the popcorn bucket with Wolverine, and
Yes.
Cinépolis is going to be doing a keychain and a specialized menu with chimichangas and whiskey slashes, among other things. So for example, if you saw it at Cinépolis in West Hartford, if you saw Twisters, all you had to do was like go downstairs. There's a Barnes and Noble. Like Cinépolis is on the second floor. Right below is a Barnes and Noble. Just go to the music section, pick up the Twisters album on vinyl, and then you've got your own marketability thing to create those to further implement those.
AMC had a popcorn bucket and a cup for Twisters.
Oh, nice.
Which was cool. I saw it and I was like, I don't really need like the cup maybe, but I was like, I'm not buying them. I don't need the. Abe is one of those collectors. I don't get the collectible popcorn buckets because I'm like, what? Like, what are you gonna eat out of it? Like at home, you're gonna fill it with microwave popcorn? No. Like, what's the point? They sell for like $22 or whatever. I'm like, that's a bit crazy.
And the funnel promotional standee is something that Twister is going to be remembered for
quite
a while. I love that.
Sadly,
yeah, me neither.
But
unfortunately,
that's okay. But I'll say this to go into as we go into final thoughts. From my personal experience, over a quarter of a century passed since that summer on Pine Tree Road. Prior to the release of Twisters, I found myself listening to and dissecting Humans' being through its lyrics and backstory. An anthem, the parallels between connection and friction are there. Yet, it's that connectivity that will forever live through us. Now, this standalone chapter provides a new generation the ability to chase, ride, and survive. The same mannerisms that an individual can empower, can power forward, embrace, and move forward in their own respective journey. The promotional material for Twisters took me back to the discovery of the VHS box atop the VCR in that loft on Pine Tree Road. A story that will forever hold a special place in my heart that speaks through the power in that emotional connection. Whether the experience is expanded through an IMAX format, an immersive 4DX format, at a dine-in format such as Cinépolis or the Alamo Drafthouse, or inside a premium cinematic format such as the Dolby Cinematic experience, regardless of how the final product turns out, it allows the opportunity to write a whole new chapter in the cinematic experience, the way it was meant to be seen. And that saying, if you feel it, chase it, a powerful life lesson that allows one to weather through any storm that may come their way. Lo and behold, the journey of Kaye.
Mike, your wrap-up thoughts on Twisters?
Honestly, I just had a great time seeing this movie experiencing it in Dolby, and even just getting to share the experience with you guys. Like you said, Matt, it's great to see that filmmakers still know how to make a summer blockbuster with sincerity, with the thrills, with the adventure, all of the elements that make the classic Spielberg films as memorable as they are. And I have a feeling that once this movie comes out on home video, it'll probably be our Thanksgiving movie choice, just because I know it's one of those movies that most people can enjoy just on its own, without like the baggage of something like the MCU or other movies that aren't quite everyone's cup of tea.
That's such a great point. I can totally see, because how usually I feel like how physical media works. Streaming, it's a little different, like rentals. Like, it's at some point in August, you're going to be able to buy this movie off of like Apple Store or Amazon Prime. Physical media, I feel like probably you're going to see like an October, November release. And you're right. Yeah, I could totally see this being one of those movies that I buy and sort of, day before Thanksgiving, maybe day of, when you're kind of just, settling into the holiday, you just kind of throw on. You're right. Yeah, it doesn't ask. You don't have to know 15 other movies to get this. You don't have to be a fan of larger than life genres to enjoy this movie. And that is, it goes back to, the original blockbuster, Jaws. It's exactly what Jaws was. Jaws, you didn't have to know anything. You didn't even have to have ever been to a beach to enjoy Jaws. And I think that's what Twisters does so well. And again, I said it, might just reiterate, but it is so, in a day and age to where I, as someone who does love comic book movies, I'm kind of getting sick of it just overtaking everything. It's so nice to know that there are still filmmakers who can make these types of movies, because that's what gives me more hope for the future of cinema than Deadpool and Wolverine making $200 billion opening weekend. Twisters gives me way more hope, because it goes, okay, when comic book movies come to their natural end, which it will, in the same way the disaster movie trend came to its natural end in the early aughts, it's nice to know that there are directors out there who will still be able to give us, like that following summer when the last of the big comic book movies comes out, we're still going to get some cool movies. And that's so great. And just, man, I'm glad that we still have movies that have charismatic leads. It's fun. They're fun movies to watch. It's nice to have a movie that is kind of a part of a franchise, but not really. Like, you could have shoved poor Helen Hunt into this movie 100. Like, there is a world where even if she's not Joe, you could have had her play Kate's mom and just been like, oh, but it's not Joe, it's Helen, and it's like, no, but it's nice that they didn't do that. They did obviously reference that the original movie exists with the Dorfman machine and saying it's field tested. And obviously we saw the evolution of the machine, because their little sensors do not have Pepsi cans tied to the top of them. It's funny, actually. I just realized that there's so many, like, the whole ending to where Tyler and Kate realize that they need the moisture to really make this work is almost like when Bill and Joe realize that they need the little spinners on the sensors to make it work. I just realized that it's the same thing. That it's like, oh, the reason why the machine didn't work the first time is because it didn't have that extra like thing that it needed. Good work, people. And overall, yeah, good work to the director and the crew and the cast of Twisters, because this is a great, awesome, fun summer blockbuster. You have not seen Twisters yet, go and check it out. Even if you're not going to be able to see in the most premium, check it out. It's a fun ride of a movie. So Tommy, where can the good people find you online?
You can follow me at the website formerly known as Twitter, X at T_Hughes35, YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, Linktree at the TMoney35. Be sure to follow my work on movies.mxdwn.com. Follow my work on Letterboxd as well. And be sure to check out at Sinopolis right now this upcoming August on before noon screenings on August 3rd. We'll be having a pancake breakfast in honor of Harold and the Purple Crayon. We'll be having a special 3-course movie meal in honor of a celebration of Back to the Future on August 7th, which will feature a 3-course meal, 3 themed cocktails, and some mocktails as well. And the month of August will be a showcase of fantasy flashback movies every Wednesday night for only $5 a ticket. On the 14th, we'll be showcasing The Iron Giant. And then on the 21st, we'll be showcasing The Neverending Story. Then on the 28th, we'll be showcasing The Wizard of Oz. Only $5 a ticket. So if you've never experienced either movie on the big screen, now is your chance to do so and have a fine dining experience to go along with it.
Very, very cool. And I'm always appreciative of films that offer flashback cinema. There's a theater in I guess a few towns over from me called the Huntington Cinema Arts Center, and they do that as well. They're doing a whole Carpenter thing over the next couple of weeks, which is really cool. Unfortunately, I work on Friday night, so I'll have to miss out on Big Trouble in Little China. But no, I always appreciate when they do stuff like that. Mike, where can the good people find you online?
You guys can find me on various social media sites at Captain K42. You can check out my quick thoughts on letterboxd.com/CoachK42. And you can follow Renegade Pop Culture on Facebook and that place at Ren Pop Culture. You can also find us on YouTube, on Podchaser. Consider supporting our Patreon at patreon.com/Renegade Pop Culture. Listen to all of our podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. And last but not least, everything can be found at renegadepopculture.com. Need an escape? So do we.
All right. And you guys, as always, can find me on Twitter at Kearns_Matthew. You can find me right here at MattMovies611. I'm hoping to have some more content coming out for you guys here in the coming months. I know this year is barreling towards an end, so I apologize for that. You can also find me on Letterboxd at MattMovies611 as well. I'm trying to get better at writing reviews, mainly just for new movies I see. So you can find my review of Twisters on there, as well as The Fall Guy and Bad Boys Ride or Die. And you can also find me on Take 3 Productions, where I host 2 shows, a video essay series called Second Look. Episode that is in the early stages of the writing process is on Jaws 3. And then I also, which I have no idea when that's going to come out. And then I also am co-host of the podcast Simple Tricks and Nonsense with Abe Flores. Currently, the show is on a bit of hiatus as Abe's hours at his job have switched. But once he gets back to a regular schedule, we will get back to a regular schedule. So I want to thank Mike and Tommy for joining me on this. It was a lot of fun. Please, in the comments, let us know what your feelings on Twister were. Twisters or Twister. Talk about both of them because they're both great. So yeah, thank you guys so much for checking this out. If you liked this video, hit the like button and share it around, because word of mouth really helps small YouTube channels grow. And no, I'm not going to say the other thing that you think I was going to say, because I hate when people say that. So it's the wonder of nature, baby.
If you feel it,